Ishiro Honda once said that the tragedy of monsters is the fact that they are born too tall, too strong, and too heavy. And at least in the context of the films, he was right. These attributes have led to Godzilla having many disagreements with the Japanese military. But at least in the context of pop culture, these attributes have led to the opposite for Godzilla. They've allowed him to prosper and produce 28 movies. But I want to analyze this and discover what it truly is about Godzilla that attracts people to him and why he's been so endearing. And the only way to truly do that successfully is to review every Godzilla movie ever made.
Some people might be angry, but regardless, welcome to Zazubaar's Godzilla Palooza. Hi, people. It's day 11 of Godzilla Palooza. I'm Zazubaar. I just don't know what to say with this one. With each of these movies, I've tried to be as planned out and analytical and deep and as structured as possible. Tried to find out exactly what I want to bring up, what I don't want to bring up, and to try and be as comprehensive with each review and each movie as I could be. And with this one, I just don't know what to say. Well, I guess I'll introduce the movie first. Today we're going to be talking about 1969's All Monsters Attack, otherwise known and more commonly known as Godzilla's Revenge. This is potentially the most infamous Godzilla film ever made. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. Is it the weirdness? Is it the music? Is it the stock footage? I don't know. There are a bunch of aspects of this movie that have made it so infamous and have made it unanimously agreed that it's the worst Godzilla movie ever made. I just don't know where I personally want to start with it. I'm trying to make each review of these movies my own and try to start where I want to start and not just start where, other people expect me to start. And I just don't know what angle to come in on this. I guess I'll start with the background of Godzilla's Revenge, which I think will ultimately lead into my opinion on the film. So yeah, let's do that. Godzilla's Revenge was released the following year after Destroy All Monsters, like the Godzilla films had been coming out since Ghidorah. A movie every year. And of course, as I mentioned yesterday, Destroy All Monsters was supposed to be the end. That was supposed to be the epic grand finale for the Godzilla series and for mainly all of Toho's sci-fi movies. Apparently not. See, here's the thing. Destroy All Monsters was really popular when it first came out. It made a lot of money, it sold a lot of tickets, it wasn't the highest grossing Godzilla film ever made, but it was up there. And it was just so popular and just so loved amongst G-fans and amongst moviegoers that Toho just couldn't let it be. They had to do another one. And not in the same style as Destroy All Monsters either, since Toho had finally realized something that I think everyone knew at this point in the Godzilla franchise, that apparently Godzilla is really popular amongst elementary school students. I don't know why they just realized that in 1969 when the character has been around for 15 years, but apparently Godzilla was really popular amongst the kids. I mean, why wouldn't he be? He's a giant monster, he destroys stuff, he's badass, and he fights other giant monsters. That's awesome. But Toho got the wrong idea from this. I don't know Gamera had a problem with this too. Actually, the whole Gamera franchise had a problem with this, but this is the first time it's a problem with Godzilla. There aren't really any prominently featured child characters in any of the Godzilla films before this. Most of them are adults. This is the first one where the main character is a kid, and believe me, it's not going to be the last. Well, mainly just in the Showa series, but it's not going to be the last time we have a child protagonist. And Toho seemed to do that only because kids like Godzilla. So I think their mantra was, hey, kids really like Godzilla, so what if we make a movie where it's a child protagonist and he's a Godzilla fan, and so that way the kids can have someone that they can relate to, sympathize with, and this movie will be really impactful on them on a personal level. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. I know it sounds reasonable and you're like, oh, that makes sense. No, it doesn't. Godzilla movies and monster movies in general are popular amongst kids because they're fun, high-octane entertainment that is highly escapist most of the time. It's just entertaining, and kids like to see things that are awesome. So, and I mean, Godzilla is one of those things. It's a giant monster that blows stuff up and fights other giant monsters. What's not to like? And it's not just kids who are Godzilla fans. I mean, people who, moviegoers were G fans too. They were going to see these movies for the same reason as they were. They were going for the escapism, for the science fiction, for the thrills, for the monsters. I mean, it's not just kids who are doing this. And I think Toho kind of leaves out a major part of their audience with films like Godzilla's Revenge because of the child angle. They really seem to overestimate the impact children can have on a monster movie, and this is a mistake that the Gamera franchise has been making its entire career. Well, not until the Heisei series, but the Godzilla started to develop the same problem where I think it was only 3 that majorly had this problem, but they started to think, hey, let's just make it about our demographic. And fair enough, but the problem is that I think with any good movie, you're not supposed to draw attention to what demographic it's going for, because then it takes people out of the movie. The beautiful thing about a movie is that it takes people and puts them into an environment they've never been in before. So with children, they're being put into a monstrous world with military and science fiction and monsters fighting each other. So I think when you make a movie about children in that world, and not in that world even, because it's not, that there are, when you make a movie about children who are fans of that world, you're really taking the escapist part out of it. And the strange thing is that Godzilla's Revenge is not a very escapist movie because the escapist scenes are dream sequences. So you can't call a movie escapist when the majority of the movie takes place in a presented as this is the real world setting. There is no indication in the scenes in this movie that aren't dream sequences that it's the same Earth that we've been following for this entire series that has Godzilla on it. It's highly implied that this is the real world where Godzilla is a fictional character. And there's no indication that this is the same world we've been following. Maybe I missed something, but that's what I got out of it. That this kid is a fan of the films, and that he is dreaming about these characters that he loves. There is absolutely no indication that monsters are real in this universe, that it's just this kid being a fan of the films and having fantasies about meeting these monsters. So, I feel like that really sucks the escapism out of it, and you make it not fun for kids anymore. Yes, they have someone they can relate with on a personal level, but guess what? When you add a child to that setting and you make it all about their escapist adventures in this place, you take out this almost first-person perspective of it, where the child can no longer imagine themselves to be in that universe because there's another child there doing that already. I don't know quite how to describe it, but Godzilla's Revenge ruins that escapist angle because the child can no longer imagine that they're in that setting because another child is doing that for them. So it hurts it. And I hated this movie as a kid. I'm not gonna lie. The thing that killed it for me is the reason the movie was made is the child angle. When you make a movie that's drawing attention to the fact that it's aimed at children, it sucks out a lot of the main aspects that made me a Godzilla fan in the first place, and probably made a lot of the Godzilla fans who were going to see this movie, all the kids who are Godzilla fans. This movie is one of the lowest grossing Godzilla films ever made, and it's not surprising why. Well, there's a bunch of reasons that we'll get into. By the way, I apologize in advance if this review's long. It's just that I don't know where to quite begin with it. So I'm going to try and make it as structured and organized as I can, and I haven't even gotten into the plot synopsis yet, and we're already 10 minutes in. I just want to really say that the child angle is a terrible idea, and it really hurts this movie in that it's trying to do something but failing miserably in it in the way that it tries to go about doing it. It's trying to be a Godzilla movie marketed specifically for kids who are the majority of the demographic going to see these movies, but it fails at it and makes it hurt because of that. Because it's taking out the escapist angle. So this movie really hurts for that. Also though, the movie is unbelievably goofy. But not even that. Not only is it unbelievably goofy, but it's unbelievably weird. Like, goofy and weird are two different things. Goofy is just kind of a comical, you know, almost like whimsical setting, kind of like Son of Godzilla. Godzilla's Revenge is not like that. It's not, I mean, it is campy, but it's not like Son of Godzilla where it's campy, entertaining fun. No, this is weird acid trip, kind of just bizarre. Like, you can't enjoy it because it's so weird, and it gets so weird and gets weird so frequently to the point where it's boring. This is one of the most boring Godzilla movies I have ever seen. And the big reason for why is the stock footage. But aside from the stock footage, it is also the weirdness. Like, there's all these just weird music cues, all these just weird plot points about, like, taking a plane to Monster Island and just dream sequences and just, you know, Minya growing to a small size and then talking and said, oh god, just so many weird ideas are shoved at the audience at once that we start to move away from the movie a little bit, and that makes it boring. So it's one of the most boring Godzilla movies for that, because it is so weird, but it's also really boring because of the overuse of stock footage. This is something the Gamera franchise has had a problem with ever since it's, well, mainly the Showa Gamera franchise, or all of the Showa Gamera franchise, is the overuse of stock footage, and Gamera became infamous for that. Godzilla started to in the late Showa series. After Destroy All Monsters, stock footage became the thing to do in a Godzilla film. In that every single little scene in Godzilla's Revenge is stock footage. There's very little actual new Godzilla footage in it, and what is there looks terrible. Eiji Tsuburaya wasn't involved with this film, and it really shows. Ishiro Honda actually ended up directing and supervising all the special effects scenes himself. And it really comes off that way because none of the precautions that Eiji Tsuburaya would take and you know, his mark of excellence isn't in this film, because it's just very straightforward shooting and nothing is trying to be hidden. Point in case, we see the zipper on Gamera's back frequently. And the suits themselves look like suits, so none of the precautions are taken. And to go back to the stock footage thing, the use of stock footage makes the movie boring because it's all stuff we've seen before, but also the stock footage hurts it in that, and this is a big thing, it comes from two entirely different movies, and the Godzilla suits are different. So, I feel like, well, I don't feel like, this is just a fact. So when you've got two Godzilla suits that alternate without any worry about it, it's just entirely noticeable and takes you out of the movie, because Godzilla will walk off frame in one suit and then he'll walk back on frame in a different suit. Like, he'll just look entirely different. Like, it'll be the Daisenso Goji suit, then it'll be the one from Son of Godzilla, and then it will be the one from Destroy All Monsters. It's so just jarring. And it takes you a minute to get accustomed to each suit, and then as soon as you get accustomed to it, it switches to a different suit. It's just maddening. And again, it really takes you out of the movie. And the big thing about Godzilla's Revenge, at least for me, and why I think it's awful and agree with everyone that it is the worst Godzilla movie ever made, is that you don't get involved in it at all. You really feel like you're a person watching a movie with this one. None of the escapism, none of the integration of or becoming part of the story like each good movie should do. And so when you feel like you're a person watching a movie, it's really distracting and really hard to sit through. So Godzilla's Revenge has that in droves, and nearly every aspect adds to that, and nearly every aspect does not work. There's really no point for me to go into a plot synopsis with this movie, only because none of the plots, subplots, plot threads come together into a story. It really is just a bunch of stuff that happens. So I'll just try it out and give you a basic outline of the premise. Basically, there's this kid named Ichiro who is a big fan of Godzilla. He's bullied, his parents are never home, so he often retreats into the fantasies of his own mind to keep himself sane and keep himself entertained. And with him, since he's a Godzilla fan, he retreats into the fantastical world of Monster Island, where he becomes friends with Godzilla's son and witnesses Godzilla have several battles and runs away from a giant monster called Hedorah. Him and Minya, now that they're friends and Minya can talk, did I really just say that? Basically the whole thing of the movie is they have to try and confront Hedorah. None of this aligns with the human drama at all, and it's just basically this kid who's a Godzilla fan dealing with stuff. I'm really sorry if I'm sounding incoherent in this review, but again, I just do not know where to start with this thing, and because I don't know where to start with it, it's going to seem really unstructured. Yes, I wrote down an organized list, but I don't feel like that's going to do the movie justice because it is so bad, and so many aspects are unconnected that it's just really hard to talk about it in an organized way. So I'm going to try my very best. So that's basically the plot. Just this kid Ichiro fantasizes about going to Monster Island. There's a bunch of Godzilla stock footage, and he runs away from a bunch of monsters, mainly Hedorah. In the end of the movie, he is kidnapped by criminals. Just don't even ask. And confronts the person who's been bullying him, and pretends that he's Godzilla's son and beats the ever-living shit out of him for no reason. And then there's a cute wrap-up where they all become friends and they knock a guy off a ladder who was like painting a sign, and it's just fucking weird. None of it makes any sense, and none of it comes into any kind of coherent story or theme. Just from the outline of that plot synopsis, I bet you can guess what I'm going to call this movie. This is Godzilla the After School Special. I mean, doesn't every problem with this movie and every element of the plot just feel like an after-school special, like an episode of a TV series with a big moral? I mean, the whole point of this movie is to teach children to stand up to their bullies, just like Godzilla's son, and to become friends and not fight. It's just so... Not only is it contradictory, but I'll get to that in a minute, but it's also really, just really phoned in and, preachy, and just never didn't want to make me to stand up to my bullies when I was a kid, I'll tell you that. It feels like an after-school special, and I wouldn't have a problem with that, except that this is supposed to be a fucking movie. This is a movie that was released in theaters, and the audience is getting ripped off because they're not going to see a movie. They're going to see a TV show, which, to quote Homer Simpson, why would we go pay to see something in the theater which we could get something on TV for free? I agree, especially with Godzilla's Revenge, because this does feel like the episode of a Godzilla TV series, and not that one existed, but... well, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon was made in the late 70s, but whatever, it has nothing to do with this. Sorry I'm jumping all over the place with this review. I cannot find a place to go coherently. I'm really trying hard. I feel like the audience is getting ripped off of that. The stock footage has everything to do with that, the preachiness of it, and just the whole package, it just feels like an episode of a TV show or just a TV special. And it doesn't feel like a theatrical movie like Destroy All Monsters did. It's just there to make money and to preach a message to kids that is really contradictory when you get down to it. But we'll get to that when we talk about the themes and allegory. And I'm not going to deny that. Godzilla's Revenge, like any other good Godzilla movie, has a theme and allegory. Doesn't mean it's a good theme and allegory or well explored, it just means that it has one. Like those other good Godzilla movies, right? Because, isn't Godzilla's Revenge just like the original Gojira? I mean, come on. The original Gojira had a lot of social commentary and themes and allegory in it, right? So Godzilla's Revenge has that too. That means it's just as good as the original Gojira, right? Fuck no. Again, the preachiness of it just litters the plot, and the plot is one contrived scene after another to come to that last minute, and none of it just makes you feel like you've learned a lesson or that the movie built up to that point or that theme. So the plot is really just a bunch of scenes thrown together. The scenes with the humans talking and Ichiro running around this really depressing looking, like, foundry area of Tokyo does not go with the monster scenes. I suppose that's the point, in that it's his escape, but just because the movie has a point doesn't mean it's a good point. I mean, it's really jarring for me as a moviegoer to sit through and watch this movie where it's all these jumping. It's jumping from the realistic yet not entirely dramatized or interesting human scenes to the fun, if not pointless, stock footage ridden Godzilla and Monster Island scenes. It's really jarring for me as a movie watcher to see all that and try to come away with it with some sense of cohesion, because Godzilla's Revenge fails miserably at it. This movie is just a really bad movie because it's a bad thing for someone to watch. Like, sure, it's weird and it's a bad movie in that the special effects are not that good and it's filled with stock footage and the acting is bad. Yeah, that all makes it a bad movie, but the thing that kills it for me and truly makes it the worst Godzilla movie ever made is the fact that it's such a difficult movie for a movie person to watch, in that it's unwatchable. It truly is the definition of unwatchable, in that it's just contradictory to what a moviegoer expects. There's no plot progression, there's no escapist in it. It's just, it is just really contradictory to what a movie is supposed to be. So it's a big thing for that, and that's what really makes it the worst Godzilla movie for me. So yeah, the plot is just a bunch of scenes thrown together, and it's just really hard to follow it, and just it's just bad. Again, it really is just a bunch of scenes thrown together, and it doesn't come together in any sense of cohesion. Just to say one last thing about the plot, and this has everything to do with the stock footage of the movie. Whenever we see monster battles in the movie, none of them happen for any reason. They just kind of happen. And there's no progression to it. It literally just feels like Godzilla is walking around an island beating the shit out of everything he sees. I mean, he fights Kamacuras, he fights Hedorah, he fights a bunch of planes, he fights Kumanga, and then he fights Gabara. It's just, it feels like he's just walking around beating the ever living shit out of everything he sees, and that's not fun to watch. It doesn't make it feel like the movie's progressing. It just feels like the audience is being tugged around on a leash. So because the audience feels like it's being tugged around on a leash with the Godzilla scenes, it also makes this movie really hard to watch. So that's really the plot. It's terrible and doesn't really feel much like a plot or a story. It's just a bunch of scenes thrown together. By the way, let me say, in the overall story, the robbery and the kidnapping and the criminals, those two thieves, make no sense and are entirely pointless. They're literally just there to add some sense of human conflict, but they have no bearing on the story, the plot, or just the movie in general. It's just kind of there to add fluff to the movie. And it feels like an after-school special in that regard as well. Let's talk about the humans and monsters. What's there to say? I mean, Ichiro is an annoying little brat who runs around screaming and yelling and everything, and just likes to watch monsters beat the shit out of each other. He's just like me when I was a kid, and I wasn't a great kid, so why would I want to watch that kind of person in a movie? Half sarcasm there. He is really just an annoying brat, and he really comes off as he just comes off as something for the Godzilla kid fans in the audience to connect with, but he fails miserably at it. The rest of the human cast is entirely unmemorable and pointless, and really just serves to be there. Kenji Sahara is in this movie. Yay? No, he has like 2 seconds of screen time and like 5 lines, but he's here, unfortunately. Oh, I felt bad for him. When I was watching this movie, I was literally screaming at the screen, "Run, Kenji Sahara! Get out of here while you still can!" He didn't hear me, and he stayed in the movie till the end, so... Oh, poor Kenji Sahara. The humans are entirely unmemorable and just one-dimensional and really just serve to be there for Ichiro to interact with them. I want to talk about the bully Gabara, not the monster, but the bully himself, whose real name escapes me, but everyone calls him Gabara. So, the kid is not really a bully. I mean, there's only 2 scenes, and neither of them he even does anything, where he even kind of comes off as a bully. One of them is when he jumps out in front of Ichiro and starts making strange noises at him. I don't know how that's bullying, it just seems like retarded urges. And then the other one is when Ichiro finds a vacuum pipe and wants to take it home with him, but Gabara tries to steal it from him, and Ichiro just gives it up without even fighting. And Gabara isn't even the one who takes it from him, it's one of his friends who just kind of follows him around like mindless slaves. Oh, it's just... He doesn't do anything bullying, he just kind of is told to be a bully, and there's nothing about him that supports that. It's just, I am mean, and we're not going to see any of me being mean. Really, I think the big thing we're supposed to take from this movie is that Gabara is a bully because Ichiro tells us he is, and, you know, kids don't lie at all, right? And also, the only bullying that Gabara seems to do in the movie is represented by the monster Gabara. And the big thing with this movie, the plot and the characters, is that Gabara represents Gabara the bully, and Minya represents Ichiro, the Godzilla fan getting picked on. And fair enough, that's all well and good, but we don't get any of the actual real little kid Gabara doing any of the bullying. It's all the monster chasing around Ichiro and beating the shit out of Minya. So, you know, the bullying aspect completely fails. So if you want to make some case for why this movie is good because it has an anti-bullying message, you're just wrong, because the main bully of the movie doesn't do any bullying. In fact, the only bully in the movie is Ichiro, because there's one scene where he just beats the ever-living shit out of Gabara for no good reason other than he tries to talk to him. Anyone sympathize with that? I don't. He just beats the shit out of him for no reason. So, who's the bully now? So the humans are just one-dimensional, Ichiro is annoying, and the bully isn't even really a bully. So, so let's talk about the monsters. What monsters, I guess, is the good question. We'll just talk about Godzilla, his son, and Gabara only because the rest of them are in stock footage, so the things I have to say about them are pointless because I said them already. So, I suppose we'll talk about Minya himself first, Godzilla's son, just because he has the most screen time. And then we'll talk about his dad. Minya is incredibly annoying in this, and this is in fact his worst appearance. He was barely in Destroy All Monsters, and in Son of Godzilla he was annoying in that, but he was also tolerable. In this, he is annoying, creepy, and the special effects on him are so bad that he looks like a pedophile, and also like the Pillsbury Doughboy again. I was creeped out just watching him be on the same scale as Ichiro and having that sock puppet-like mouth moving and that voice. Oh, that voice. I watched the original Japanese cut for the first time today. I've only seen the American cut before this, and the voice is entirely different in the Japanese cut. In the English cut, it's this really cartoony male voice that sounds like this. Godzilla says I should fight my own battles, you know. That just happened. And then the Japanese cut, he sounds like a pedophile. It's a female actor voice and trying to play a male child voice. Let me try and imitate it. It basically sounds like, you know the parents from the Peanuts cartoons? It sounds like them. Except you have to try and understand what they're saying. I mean, it wasn't a problem for me because I wasn't listening to the Japanese dialogue, I was reading the subtitles, but I pity the Japanese folks out there who have to sit through this movie without the subtitles, or sit through it in theaters without the subtitles when they first saw it. Here, I'll try and imitate it. Hi, Ichiro. How are you doing? Kind of sounds like, you know that old pedophile from Family Guy? Kind of sounds like that. It's creepy and is distracting and makes Minya sound really fucking annoying. Oh god, it's just terrible. And of course the American voice is slightly worse, because it's just so goofy. And, it's just so bad, and the effects on him are terrible, and his character is annoying, and let's talk about him representing Ichiro as a characterization for him. Fine, it fits in well with what we had in Son of Godzilla. Minya is, having problems being his father's son, and that he's kind of a coward, and he's a baby, and he doesn't want to fight for himself, though he doesn't have the same excuses that he did in Son of Godzilla, because he's much, much older in this film. I mean, he's not a full-grown adult, but he's a lot older to the point where, he can stick up for himself. And, I mean, that's the point of the movie, but doesn't mean that he's sympathetic or likable or it's a good characterization. It just means that he's annoying. This is easily his worst appearance, and, oh god, he's just so creepy and annoying and just terrible. And he doesn't work good for, filling in for Ichiro in the Gabara fight scenes because, he's almost more annoying than Ichiro is, and Minya doesn't really have a reason to be scared. I mean, Ichiro is so shy and, like, kind of a doormat to the bullies because his parents are never around, so he kind of retreats into his own subconscious. What excuse does Minya have? He's got a dad who beats the shit out of everything he sees, and he's kind of the son of a king of the monsters, and it's just dumb. So he doesn't have any reason for it, and it just comes off as, oh, we'll have him represent him. It's going to sound really deep. So, fail there. Minya is just really annoying, and it's easily his worst appearance, both physically and character-wise. So, it's terrible. Let's talk about Godzilla. I have nothing to say. It's typical Godzilla, slightly badass stuff. His fight scenes are good because they're from other movies. I mean, the one fight scene with Gabara at the end of this movie is okay. It's not the greatest thing ever, but the rest of the fights are all lifted from other movies. I mean, two not great Godzilla fight movies. I mean, we have Sea Monster and Son of Godzilla in this, and neither of those movies have great fight scenes. Honda actually does mess with the Sea Monster fight scene where Godzilla first fights Ebra, and then he makes it easier to see it. And he does definitely try to fix it up a little bit so that way, Fukuda's amateur shooting of a monster battle scene doesn't stink through the film. And Honda tries to fix it up the best he can, but even then, it's not the greatest thing ever. But Godzilla is just the same as he was in Son of Godzilla, just a badass who's trying to be a dad and kind of failing at it, so not much to say about him. He doesn't get any progression here. He's just kind of Godzilla. And, no, he's not the superhero yet. Wait one more movie. He's not even kind of the superhero yet. He's still very much so that badass monster who goes around kicking other things' asses. And judging by dialogue by Ichiro and in the main song of the movie, we'll get to that, he clearly is still a force of destruction, so, not a superhero yet. We'll get that in the next movie, but, so not much development for Godzilla. He really doesn't get much of a characterization because most of his scenes are indeed stock footage. Let's talk about Gabara. He has no impact on me, at least. I just don't have anything to say about him. He's just kind of there, and is mostly just there to represent the Gabara bully, and just, he's got a decently interesting appearance, but he looks goofy as all hell. He creates electricity. I don't know why. Whenever he shocks something, the frills on the top of his head light up with electricity, and it's kind of cool, but otherwise he's just really lame looking and stupid looking and just bad looking. The suit is awful, but he's got a somewhat unique appearance, and The only thing that bugs me is his face because he looks just like Godzilla in the face. The point of Gabara was to try and capture a an ogre or like kind of nightmarish kind of Japanese folklore monster in the look, so that way he could work well as a dream kind of monster and not like an actual physical thing. Fair enough, but he looks like Godzilla in the face, so that doesn't work at all for it. And overall the suit is just really bad, and the design is unique but nothing great. So speaking of that, let's talk about the effects in the movie. What effects? Everything's stock footage, right? Yeah, there is a lot of stock footage again, but there is definitely some new footage with Godzilla. The entire opening credits of the movie is stock footage from Destroy All Monsters, and a lot of this, basically every scene with Godzilla is stock footage. But the last fight with Gabara and many scenes with Ichiro, you know, those are all newly shot scenes. I talked about kind of the effects already, but I'll just sum it up like this. God, I miss Zazubaar. Indeed, I don't think he's gonna. No, I don't think he does Godzilla vs. Hedorah, so I don't think we're gonna get any more of Zazubaar's work in the franchise. So unfortunately, his excellence is missing, and Ishiro Honda was kind of on his own with this one to do the effects by himself, and having some help from one of Zazubaar's underlings. I mean, Zazubaar was still at Toho, he was just not doing Godzilla anymore. And really just, it comes through with this movie. It's just a really just mediocre looking kind of movie. I mean, all the scenes with the monsters doing stuff are really straightforward shooting, and you can easily tell the rubber suits and just the way they look, and you can see some of the seams on them, especially Gabara. It's not the way the Godzilla series used to look. So without Zazubaar, the movie does definitely kind of sink, it's unfortunate. I really feel like they tried their best to make the scenes look good. They don't look terrible. They're not up to the same caliber of the past films. Just the overuse of stock footage makes all these special effects scenes seem like really inconsistent. So it's really distracting. So let's talk about the theme and allegory of the movie. Again, the effects, well, just to sum up the effects again, they're not bad, they're just not what the series used to be, and I miss Zazubaar. Let's talk about the theme and allegory. Again, there is definitely something here. Don't mean it's good, but there's definitely something here. Godzilla's Revenge is all about bullying and standing up for yourself and not being a doormat. And I'll explain it briefly. Basically, it's just Ichiro, is the typical nerd. He gets picked on, and he doesn't do anything to stand up for himself. So he has to learn to do it by himself because his parents are never around. It's basically just saying, hey kids, stop being doormats and letting people walk all over you. Stick up for yourself, Fair enough, but the thing is that the reason why it doesn't work is because we don't get a grasp on the bullying. And I feel like the criminal thing and the kids standing up, Ichiro standing up to the criminals is a really bad idea, because guess what? You're teaching kids, hey, if you get kidnapped, try and beat the shit out of them. No, don't try that. I mean, just the way that the scenes are presented, and that Ichiro has flashbacks to Menya fighting Gabara, and when he defeated Gabara, that it gives some kind of strength to combat the kidnappers. No, bad idea. You're teaching kids that if they get kidnapped, that they've got people with guns and knives to try and beat them up. No. Bad idea, and it gives kids the wrong message. And the other thing is, again, this is just the problem of Gabara doesn't get enough of the bullying thing. When Ichiro beats the shit out of him at the end, there's no reason for it, and I really do think that you're teaching kids to be violent. And it's especially a problem since people have pointed fingers at films like the Godzilla franchise and stuff like it, that they make kids violent, and I can kind of see that, but I do ultimately disagree for the most part. But with Godzilla's Revenge, I completely agree. It's definitely a problem, because you're seeing the fact that the monsters are fighting is giving Ichiro the courage to beat the shit out of another kid, and it makes him want to fight and be mischievous. I mean, the last thing he does in this movie is don't paint on someone, and the film condones it. What the fuck? It's just, It doesn't work. The theme is really contradictory because it's trying to be kind of... I mean, this is a Shiro Honda. This is pacifist #1, and he's teaching kids to fight. It does not work. I don't like it, and I think it's sending kids the wrong message. So I really do not like the theme and allegory. It's really preachy, and again, it feels like an after-school special. And I feel like if you're a kid who went to see this movie, it didn't, its point is lost in how preachy it is, and makes kids step away from it rather than want to accept it. It doesn't work. I mean, I never saw this and said, hey, I want to stand up for my bullies now. It just never had that impact on me. It was always just a shitty Godzilla movie for me. And it's still that way today, and I think the theme and allegory is legitimately bad because it's giving kids the wrong message to beat the shit out of people for no reason. So I really resist the theme and allegory and think it's bad, and is part of the reason why I say skip it, because it gives your kids the wrong idea. So the theme and allegory is awful. I think I just think it's legitimately bad, and it's ultimately one of the big reasons to skip the movie. The last thing I want to cover in this review is getting very long, I apologize. So the last thing I want to cover about Godzilla's Revenge is the music score by Kunio Miyuchi. It is really, really hit and miss in a way that Ifukube and Sato's music before this wasn't. Ifukube and Sato's scores were always either really great or really not unfitting of the film. Again, I like all their music, but a lot of it doesn't fit them. Well, not a lot. Excuse me. Some of it, the stuff that doesn't work, just doesn't fit the movie. It's not that it's bad music; it just doesn't fit the movie. With Miyuchi's score, I legitimately think it's bad sometimes. Not only is there not a lot of it is repeating throughout the film over and over again, but also it's really distracting and kind of takes you out of the movie and how weird it is. And I'm not gonna say it doesn't fit the tone, it definitely does. This movie is basically a 69-minute acid trip, but it's just the repeating of it, and just the fact of how distracting it is, again, it fits the movie. The movie is really kind of, it takes the audience out. So the music fits the movie in that regard, but that's not a good thing. So it's actually kind of unfortunate that the music fits the movie in this case. Now, I say hit and miss, not all of it's bad. Some of it is really catchy, like the main theme of the film is like all the stuff that plays when the monsters are fighting is really catchy and kind of upbeat jazz and makes you want to dance. Did I just really say that? And it's really catchy and kind of gets your body moving and stuff, but the opening credits music is distracting and makes you want to cut yourself because of how weird it is. So the music is good, well, it's hit and miss, but the fact that it repeats constantly in the film hurts the movie and is not something that Ifukube and Sato did. So the film is really hurting because of that. So the music is really hit and miss. It is definitely very catchy and memorable. It's just there's not enough of it to call it a good Godzilla score, and some of it is legitimately bad, like the opening credits music. So that'll about do it for this review of Godzilla's Revenge. It's an awful, awful movie in every regard. Nothing works. It's just a terrible Godzilla film. It's a terrible movie in general. The special effects are not that good. The music is not that good. The story is non-existent. The theme and allegory is bad and gives kids the wrong idea. And it's just fucking weird. So overall, every aspect of this movie sucks. It's just a terrible Godzilla movie. Nothing works in it. Nothing supports it. The only thing redeeming about it I can even kind of say is, I don't know, every aspect is terrible. It is slightly entertaining at points, but it's one of those movies where it's like, at some points it's so bad it's good, but overall it's just a really terrible movie. If anything, the Monster Island scenes are kind of entertaining, but again, it can't save the movie, and because it's all stock footage, there's better movies with the same footage in it. It's just a really awful movie. I'm gonna give it a 0.5 out of 5. Holy shit, is it terrible. Skip it. burn every copy of it. Nothing about it makes any sense. Nothing about it works. The theme and allegory is off, and it gives the kids the wrong message. Skip it 10 times over. Burn every copy of it because it's insincere and is carrying on a franchise that ended just to make more money and fails miserably at everything it tries to do. And it's just a terrible movie. Skip it. Burn every copy. Oh God. It's easily the worst Godzilla film ever made, and we'll never stoop this low again. I mean, we'll get more bad Godzilla movies, but not this bad. This is just terrible. So 0.5 out of 5, skip it, worst Godzilla movie ever made. Ugh. Alright, so that'll about do it for this review of Godzilla's Revenge. Stay tuned next time where we jump ahead 2 years and get into some more really cheesy, campy Godzilla films aimed at children when we review Godzilla vs. Hedorah, or more commonly known as Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for that review. Sayonara.
Godzilla